Hi, Abhishek.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well. Welcome to Sudeep Audio's channel finally.
Finally, happy to be here.
Abhishek, in this part, we'll talk about your journey in the field of sound and how did you kind of, grow your career so that a lot of viewers who are not from this industry or not from Bombay can, learn from your experiences and, get some guidance from you.
I think my story is like a typical college boy trying to make his way into the whole performing arts kind of thing. Um, Started off with obviously being a huge fan of um, old 80s country music, Bee Gees, Beatles. That's because my dad used to have these mixtapes, cassettes that he used to take. So my dad's a retired sailor now. So he used to make all these mixtapes and like he just leave them around in the house and I just like in my free time just go listen to them. And I think that's how I just grew into listening to that kind of music. Then obviously the whole foray into college and um, everyone wanted to be in a band. And the problem was everyone in my college was pretty much playing the guitar. And I remember as a kid in my third or fourth standard, my parents wanted me to learn the tabla. So I had a tabla instructor who used to come home and give me instructions and stuff. And I don't know, I think it's probably the stupidest thing that I've done because back then I never considered, I always wanted to play the guitar and, the typical definition of rock star and play rock and roll and be cool and stuff. And I was not really that interested in learning the tabla, which I deeply regret right now. I mean, I really wish I'd learned it properly. But I mean, yeah, I just learned the basics like teen tals and just a couple of other basic groups. I think I learned for about 3 to 6 months, and then I quit because I wasn't showing a lot of interest. I think even my teacher got fed up. So then slowly moved on to passed out from school, moved into college. And college, like I said, everyone was playing guitar, attempting to sing rock and roll and stuff. And I don't know, for some reason I was always fascinated by drummers and playing the drums. So I remember, I think in the end of the last 2 months of me passing out of high school, we had this program where you had to pick one extracurricular and find a way to learn it, and eventually by the end of the year just perform that in front of the school. So I remember picking up drums because there was another friend of mine in my class who also picked up the drums before me, and I saw him getting a lot of like attention from women, from the girls, and I was like, you know what? I mean, obviously, even I wanted that. So I was like, man, mere ko bhi seekhna hai. And I had no idea about drums and rock music, and I had no clue back then. So slowly, I started getting these mixed CDs. Obviously, came in. So I remember a friend of mine had bought this Asus CD burner, and obviously, like illegal music was going on everywhere. And I asked him to download a couple of songs for me and put it on this CD so that I could listen to it. So I started listening to a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Metallica was a huge influence at that time. Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, a lot of like 80s metal music. And I started listening to that. I started listening to how the drummers would play. I started focusing on that every time I listened to music, songs. And then I started discussing all these things with my friends, my friend who was the drummer over there. And we would talk about like Metallica's drummer, Lars Ulrich, like tons of other drummers at that point. Discuss them and talk about grooves and this and that. And I kept hounding my dad for the longest time to buy me a pair of drums. A drum kit, sorry. I wanted him to buy me a drum kit. And he wasn't really sure if I was serious about it. And obviously, for a middle class family, to buy a drum kit isn't the cheapest thing. So I remember for 3 years I kept hounding him, and then obviously I moved on into college. And then I kept pestering my parents to at least send me to a school where I can learn the drums. And for some reason, my mom used to go to the same gym as um, Loy's ex-wife. So they became friends, and she told me that Loy knows a school in Ghatkopar, where Louis Banks' son Gino teaches drums. And I was like, cool. Of course I knew about Louis Banks, and I was like, I'll be super interested to learn this. I met Gino over there for the first time. I remember back then he had this like orangish red goatee. He was really quiet, sitting on the side, and just like I think he was reading sheet music or something. And I went there with this whole like college attitude, ki, "Arey boss, I'm a damn good drummer," and all. Like I just knew one or two basic roots. I wasn't good at all. But of course, you had this little um, arrogance about you. So I went there. I was like, "Acha, theek hai. He looks super young. He has this red goatee. What is he going to teach me?" So then, after 10 minutes, he got up, introduced himself, took me to the drum room, and he was like, "See, I don't know how good or bad you are. Let's just why don't you just play for like 5 minutes, and then we'll take it from there. I'll see. I'll gauge at what level you are, and we'll take it from there." So I went there and I just like blasted on the kit. I just played, I think, a typical metal groove, no sense of timing, no sense of dynamics. I just went as loud as and fast as possible. Of course, I was also nervous because there was someone just staring at me. And then Gino was like super kind, super chill. He just looked at me, gave me a smile. He's like, "Oh, that's quite cool." And in my head, I was like, "Man, I don't think that was that cool, but I think it's just being nice about it." So then, anyway, he's like, "Okay, cool. Let me just warm up, and we'll start with basic rudiments over there." So then he sat, and man, 15 minutes he played a drum solo. It blew my mind completely. I was like, "Boss!" Like from then on, like my entire arrogance, my everything just like crashed. And I was like, "Sir, just teach me whatever you want from start. I don't know anything about drumming. I want you to just teach me from the beginning." And then that's how my journey into music in any way started. So Gino taught me for I think a year or 2 years, if I'm not wrong. I don't really remember this. So I think me and Jay were one of his first students. Jay Rao Kavi was a fantastic drummer again. So we started off, and then slowly through the months and years, I realized that I'm a decent drummer. But after watching these guys play, and I used to go and see their concerts and their gigs and stuff. I remember Gino used to perform at Zenzi a lot with his band Nexus. So I used to go and see that quite a bit. And I was like, "Man, I'm at no level to be a professional drummer in any way." I mean, of course, I played in a lot of college bands and cover bands. I played like Maiden covers. I did a couple of fusion concerts with some of my college friends. But I knew in my head I was not. I mean, the good thing about that was I wasn't delusional about, man, I'll make it. I'll do something. Of course, I'm really passionate about drumming even now. But I knew somewhere inside something told me that this is not what I can make money out of or make a career out of. And then slowly, my dad, he used to bring me these DVDs of concerts and behind the scenes. These DVDs used to always have these behind the scenes footage, especially with bands like Rush, Dream Theater, Metallica, even. And these behind the scenes videos would always have this drum tech, like setting up the drum kit, tuning the kit, miking the kit. And I don't know, automatically, I just got so drawn to that. I got drawn to the idea of, being able to tune a drum kit, to be able to mic a drum kit, what mics to use, how to make it sound good, why do certain drums sound a certain way in certain songs, etc. So I started getting into that quite a bit. And I remember subscribing to the Sound on Sound magazine before I even like knew anything about sound engineering. And then I met Shane Mendonca, who's a fantastic composer and producer, son of Loy Mendonca, of course. And we became really good friends. And he was producing a lot of music at that point, and he was working on Logic. I remember I had this cracked Fruity Loops software. I don't even remember what version. It was really old. And I used to make a few beats, just like tinker around a little bit, but I had no clue about how to get into production or get into sound, etc. Then spending time with Shane, he showed me a lot of tools and things that DAWs can do. And I got so drawn to that. I got so excited. The next day, I remember telling my father that, "Man, I don't want to do my MBA. I just want to like go abroad and study." So luckily, my dad was very supportive. I acquired a student loan, went to Australia, studied at SAE Byron Bay. I did um, I did my course over there, and I think that moment was a changing, life changing experience for me, because not only did I get to learn something that I love, it also teaches you a lot of independence as a human. Because I mean, especially with Indian kids, we are quite dependent on our parents. Like they do everything for us. Like they'll make us breakfast, they'll wake us up, wash our clothes, do our dishes. We don't do anything. We're quite privileged like that. So living independently also taught me a lot of, it made me very responsible, made me more mature. um, and I was studying a lot. Like I was studying, I was also working side by side, and I think that I think that experience for me, it really changed something in me. It made me more responsible. I think I was a very complacent kid back then. I mean, I just thought that if nothing works out, my dad's going to do something for me. He'll help me out. He'll find a way for me. But living alone there, living with so many different people from all over the world, it just made you realize that you have to make it on your own. Like no one's there to help you out. No one's responsible for you. You are responsible for yourself. And then that drove me into studying harder, into getting better grades, into just going really deep into sound. And I think that was still the year when YouTube had just started up. I think 2008, if I'm not wrong. YouTube was coming up. Of course, there were not a lot of instructional videos even back then, so I was still subscribing to these magazines, etc., learning about it. And then we had these books by David Miles Huber, Modern Recording Techniques, um, Bobby Osinski, Mixing Engineer's Handbook, etc. So we studied a lot of these things. We got access to amazing studios with SSL consoles, etc. And that whole world engulfed me completely. Like it was all about sound and microphones and recording techniques and mono and stereo and surround, etc. It was amazing. It really made me happy. And I just knew for a fact that this is the only thing on earth I can do where I can really like work my ass off completely, like 24/7, and still feel happy about it. So I knew, I think at that point I knew that this is what I wanted to do. Then I came back to India with this whole new fire inside me, that I'm definitely going to come here and just do something, make a difference in the um, recording and mixing scenario in Bollywood. Not really Bollywood, but mainly in the music scene. I was still quite anti-film industry at that point. I never really listened to a lot of Hindi music. It was more about bands and um, orchestras and electronic music quite a bit. And I had no connections whatsoever in any kind of field in terms of music and recording in studios and stuff. So the only person I knew was Gino. I gave him a call, I think a week, not even a week, 2 days after I came back to Bombay. I gave him a call and I asked him, like, see, man, I'm sure you do sessions in studios. Like, do you mind if I, tag along and maybe just make my acquaintance known to to a couple of studio engineers, etc. So maybe I can just get a job as an assistant somewhere. And he was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm doing a recording tomorrow at in Andheri. It's for a Salim Suleiman song. And why don't you come? So he gave me the address. I went there, and of course, I mean, I saw the entire drum recording session happen, and it was fantastic.
What studio was this?
This was Aslam Studio in Andheri. So they were recording drums for this song called Nazara Hai by Salim Suleiman for this movie. I think this movie was 8 is to 10 Tasveer, if I'm not wrong. I mean, the film didn't do well, but that song, like, it's still one of my top Salim Suleiman songs. So I saw the recording. Of course, I asked Aslam if there's any availability in terms of job as an engineer, etc. But he obviously had someone under him, and he didn't have an opening. But we kept in touch. And then I came back home, and I kept making calls. I remember making at least 15 to 20 calls in different studios, and no one was available right now at that point to hire a new engineer, etc. And then I got a call. I think I got a call, or maybe I made a call to a friend of mine who was also in Australia studying with me. And he was working at Digital Academy, teaching over there with Mr. Daman Sood, Mujib Dadarkar, and Vijay Benegal. And he was like, there is an opening for a teacher in the practical division, like just to conduct recordings and practicals and just teach them the basics of miking techniques, etc. I was like, man, any job would work right now because I need to make money. I need to prove to my parents that the money that has been spent to learn this craft, I mean, it has to, like, give some returns. So I went there. I got the job. I started teaching. I was teaching Pro Tools. I was teaching miking techniques, basic recording techniques, etc. I was there for, I think, almost 2 years, pretty much 2 years, and that happened. But if by the end of it, I just realized that I don't want to teach yet. I do enjoy teaching for sure, But I felt that this is not the right time for me to teach because I don't have any industry experience. I have nothing to show for. So the only knowledge that I could impart at that point was extremely bookish and theoretical. So I had no real world experience. And I don't know, for some reason, I just felt that this isn't the right move as of now. So anyway, after 2 years, um, I got a call from my best friend at that time. And he told me that Vishal and Shekhar are looking for a sound engineer because their engineer is getting married and he's leaving the job. Like, man, this seems like a pretty big jump because Vishal and Shekhar are huge, massive names in the industry. And I have no industry experience. So, but he was like, man, there's no harm in applying and seeing. I mean, if it doesn't work out, leave, whatever. So I sent Vishal an email. And at that point, I was still very, like, not very keen on working in film music because I wasn't a huge fan of Bollywood music at that point. But Vishal was also, I mean, I knew Vishal because in the whole rock and indie scene, which I was also a part of, Vishal had Pentagram. He was the lead singer there, and I'd seen him from afar. I'd seen a lot of we have a lot of common friends, and they spoke highly of him, etc. And I just realized that, man, I don't think he can be those typical Bollywood filmy type people. I think he'd be pretty cool to work with, etc. Because of that, because of the Pentagram side to him as well. So I sent him an email. I sent him my CV, and I mean, surprisingly, he replied back saying that, why don't you come to the studio? Let me just have a word with you, and we'll take it from there. And at that point, I just had Pro Tools experience. My only experience working in any DAW was Pro Tools, and they used to work in they worked on Nuendo at that point. So I went there, and Vishal, apparently he had done he had made some calls. I think he had spoken to Mujib and Vijay Benekal about me. And I think they had given some good reviews about me to him. So I think that really helped. And I think the day I met him is the day he offered me the job. So he told me, see, we don't work on Pro Tools. You'll have to learn Nuendo. So I was like, okay, but how much time do I have? And he said, see, it's Christmas time. The year's ending. There's not much work. So just chill out. Aram se, just do your thing. And Vishal, Shekhar, how they work. So I was like, okay, cool, it's all good. I started like opening all these tutorials online, checking out videos on how to, like basic routing of Nuendo. I went behind the console just to see all the physical routing and everything about it. And that evening, Vishal comes inside. This was a smaller recording group. He comes in and he's like, how's it going? So I'm like, everything's good. I'm just like figuring it out. He's like, okay, cool, cool. So he told me, Randolph has sent me a track, a new Pentagram track. Why don't you download it? I just want to hear it. And this is my first day into the job. And I downloaded it, played it to him. He heard it for a couple of seconds and was like, Acha, chalo, take. And I was like, what? I I don't know anything about this like studio and setup as of now. It's my first day and I'm still figuring it out. Like, "Arey, cool, no stress. We'll do it like step by step." It's like, okay, take it. Turn the mic on, put the preamp on. Still trying to figure out my inputs and outputs. And then karte it just happened. Like, of course, I struggled a lot. And I was constantly on the talkback apologizing to Vishal after every take, saying, "Arey, wait, we have to take this again because it didn't record properly." And that was literally like how I got into it. So after that, I got so nervous because I was constantly fearing for my job. I was always thinking that maybe if I'm not good enough, they'll just replace me with another engineer. And I mean, engineers today are just dime a dozen in this industry. So that night, I didn't go home. I spent the entire night in the studio, learned everything I could about Cubase and Nuendo, and just prepared myself for the worst. And that's pretty much how I started off. Like, it was literally just come in and dive into the deep end. There was no, acha, we'll take it aram say, just like ease it out, we'll help you. There was no one there because Calvin, who was the previous engineer, he was busy with his wedding preparations. So I really couldn't get a lot of help from him at that point. So, I mean, yeah, it was a struggle, but I think in hindsight, I think it was a good thing that happened because I've learned one thing about me, which is I can perform extremely well under pressure. And that is because of my experience with working with Vishal and Shekhar. Because, no, I'm not saying it in a bad way, to be honest, but it's not the easiest experience, easiest environment working there because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of last minute things that you have to just snap up and just be really good at. They don't have patience for you to figure things out. So you need to do all this in your free time. And there was a lot of like pockets of like free time during the afternoon where they would just come in. Maybe he and Shekhar would just like lock themselves up in a room and just write music. So at that point, I had no work. I wasn't really doing anything. So that's when I would go into the studio, learn the mics, learn the cables, I did a lot of cleaning in that studio at the back. I remember there was this one time I just like removed a heap of some 56 cables at the back, which are not connected to anything. They were just like rolled up into a ball. So I took a lot of time to learn and figure my way out into this scene. And of course, because I was working as the senior sound engineer for Vishal and Shekhar, I ended up making a massive network of people because they were working with pretty much everyone. And I think I recorded pretty much every singer in the industry at that point. So I, of course, made a good network with a lot of them, which helped me ahead in the future. When I left Vishal and Shekhar, I decided to become a freelance mix engineer because my initial passion was to be a recording engineer. But then I realized that now technology has gone so ahead, everything is being produced. The live recording industry is just pretty much dead, and it's sad. But I know a lot of session musicians don't have enough work as they used to back in the day. But that is where my true love was, like recording musicians, recording instruments, using different kind of mics. But then I realized that that's not the only thing I can do to survive. I need to pretty much get into a lot of other things, and mixing at that point was big. Engineers who like established mix engineers were making a lot more money than studio like in-house engineers. So that's why I decided I'll take my career, and that's how it happened. I just got into that space, and yeah, I think from then on, like the journey is still on. I'm still doing this. So yeah.
Right. So, Abhishek, now you are a freelance engineer, right? You work from your own studio.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
what kind of work do you do, and what kind of projects do you undertake now?
So when I started off, it was mainly mixing songs. I tried my best to get a lot of film music, film songs, and I remember my first project as a freelance engineer was mixing and mastering the album of Humpty Sharma Ki Dulhania. This was I think 2013, if I'm not wrong, or 14, 13 I think. देखना पड़ेगा. So then, um, yeah, so that's how it started, and I was like, chalo, maybe I'll just like take this on. I'll contact a lot of composers, get in touch with them, just see how it works. Because see, I mean, at that point we had engineers like Eric Pillay, we have Shadab, who were killing it. Like pretty much everyone was working with them. They still are working with them. So it was a little difficult at that point to get clients at that level, because again, for me, I'm not the type of person who will go behind someone and say, don't work with him, work with me, etc. I would never do that. So I always try to find clients who are looking for engineers rather than going to people who already have engineers and then trying to sell myself. I just didn't feel right about it. Like for me, it's if you come to me, I will work, but I'm not going to approach you for any kind of work. I mean, luckily, I've still been lucky enough to not ask for work yet. So it started like that, but then slowly, I just realized uh, a lot of production houses were getting involved in the mix process, and that really bothered me even today, because every time I did a film song, it's not just me connecting with or communicating with the producer or communicating with the music director or the composer of the song. I have the director giving his inputs, the actors are giving his or her inputs. And see, I mean, I'm very open to criticism. Like, if I do a mix and if you give me a million changes, I will do a million changes. But I will only do those changes from someone who understands what I'm doing. But if someone who does not understand mixing in any way and just gives his or her inputs like, अरे वोकल बढ़ा दो और लाउड पंच आना चाहिए वोकल में, I'm like, वोकल में पंच कैसे आएगा? The song is one, it's one unit. The vocals isn't the only thing that stands out in the song. It has to be the rest of the production. Otherwise, why are people even producing music? So some of the inputs were shit. Some of the inputs were just, it pissed me off, because eventually what I ended up doing for them in terms of mixing they didn't turn out to be good mixes according to me. Now what I feel is, if I have spent so much money and time and energy into learning one craft, which is mixing and mastering, who is someone who doesn't know anything about mixing and mastering to tell me what to do? That is something that really bothered me. And that is when I started that's when I decided that I'm going to work with people who respect and understand mixing, people who respect engineers. They don't just treat people like shit, treat engineers and producers like shit, because for them to understand what we do, they need to spend time with us. Uh, they need to watch us work, because all they see us doing is sitting in front of a machine and just like pressing buttons. But there's a lot more to that. So I started doing a lot of independent work, which didn't pay me as much then. But now things have changed a lot, because now I get a lot more money mixing independent work as opposed to just mixing film work. Also, it's the respect, man. Like independent artists, they give you a lot more respect. They don't haggle so much when it comes to payment, as opposed to big labels and these big film production houses, etc. They make you feel like they're doing you a favor, like हमने तुमको काम दिया है types. हमने काम दिया है, मतलब this is our job, and we are a freelance. I mean, I'm a freelance engineer, and you're coming to me because you know that I'll do a good job. So I started doing a lot of indie work. That's when I met Raftar. I started doing a lot of his mixes. Through that, I got to work with Divine, and Raftar and Divine are like massive names in the hip hop scene today. And that's how it just like grew on. Like, of course, like Jonita Gandhi, she's another really close friend of mine. So I started mixing her work, and that's how I built my clientele, and that's how I started networking with those people, because I kind of understood their space. I used to listen to a lot of their music. I mean, Jonita I knew before she came to India. She moved to India permanently. So we used to like get in touch, and she would send me her covers. I would listen to her music. I would listen to her singing, and that, automatically you just understand the texture and the feel that they're going for. So it's really easy to connect with those people, and yeah, that's how it just happened for me, I think. And yeah, so apart from songs, so yeah, I forgot to mention. I also started mixing background scores, because that is something I love doing a lot, which I didn't know I loved until I started doing it. So I was at the gym, and I met Sanchit Balhara, who is the composer and producer for a lot of scores like Padmavati, Padmavat, Baji Rao Mastani, Kalank, Manikarnika, tons of other films. So he met me at the gym, and then we got along in 5 minutes. Like we connected, we started talking about composers, and I used to listen to a lot of scores, like from John Williams, Hans Zimmer, James Newton Howard, Thomas Newman, etc. And that's how we connected. And then we decided to meet up, share music, share our interests sonically. And then he was like, "Man, I'm doing this movie next year. Would you be interested in mixing the score for that?" I was like, "Man, hell yeah!" So the first film I mixed was Padmavat with Sanchit. And yeah, that's how I got into. And man, like, if you ever get a chance to have a conversation with that guy, he's like Wikipedia when it comes to scoring and composers. Have a conversation with him. It's brilliant. There's a lot you can learn from that.
Definitely. You spoke about, all the names that you gave are your current clients. You're working
Right.
with them. Obviously, they pay you on time, so you're happy with them. It's
Yeah.
also a factor.
I mean,
But
not
we,
all, but yeah, most of them do.
okay.
Yeah.
So not all clients are great.
Mm,
We do have
yeah.
beep all clients.
Right.
How do you
Yeah.
handle those kind of people? Because not everybody you meet will get along with you in 5 minutes or ever in life.
True.
So how do you kind of handle them?
So if someone doesn't get along with me personally, that is totally okay, because I don't think anyone in the world is liked by everyone in the world. There's always someone who will not get your vibe, understand your vibe, and that is totally fine. My issue is with people who put on a facade. They try to act very diplomatic, and if anyone knows me, if you ask anyone who's my friend, they know how brutally honest and straightforward I am as a person. So I kind of expect that from someone who I'm working with as well. And all the clients who are my friends today and who I'm working with regularly are equally honest with me, and that's the relationship I prefer having, because the less bullshit there is between two people, I think the work is more honest. You guys can push each other in terms of quality, in terms of production, in terms of music, everything. So handling difficult clients, I mean, now, because I mean, I'm touch wood, I'm very lucky. I'm at this point where I am getting regular work. Yeah, I'm luckily, even during lockdown, I mean, I'm still mixing stuff, so that's fantastic. So I feel really grateful for that. So because I'm in this position now, it's easy for me to say no to people I can't vibe with anymore. Now I have two kinds of clients. One is if a client is just paying me money and is being difficult, it's fine because I said yes to the job. I am charging money for it. That person hasn't asked for a discount. Fair enough. Money becomes my motivating factor. Another one is if a client is being difficult and again starts cribbing about budget, ki budget nahi hai, I don't have money, I'm paying out of my pocket, blah blah blah, and then I still agree to do it. Then I kind of expect a certain understanding from you as a client as well. Like for example, if you are my client and if I charge X amount for a mix, and then you are like, you know what, I'm paying money from my pocket. I don't have money right now. Can you please help me out? So I do it for X divided by 2, which is half my rate. You should have a basic understanding and respect in terms of, okay, because this person is doing it for this, like for less money, let me not be super difficult about um, my feedback towards him. And see, feedback is again fine. Like for example, if I've mixed a song, you want certain things loud, certain things soft, something is not punchy enough, something doesn't have enough low end or high end or whatever. That is fine. But then being really anal about something that does not make sense, and I still try to make them understand that what you're saying does not make any sense at all. Like I remember there was just one client who was like, "Bro, the melody is really nice, but like, can you do something about the music part of it?" I was like, how do you even react to something like that? You don't even know what that person means in the first place. Then they were like, "Arey nahi, isko thoda banana padega. Isko kaise banana padega?" Like, what are you trying to say? Like, at least have some technical knowledge to impart that knowledge to me so that I know what to do. Instead of just blabbing on because just because you feel that you're paying money, you feel that you have the right to just tell him or tell her whatever you want. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So let them do their job, trust their expertise, trust the fact that they're doing this for you. It's kind of a favor even if they're doing it for you for cheap, because they are trusting you with the fact, and it's this false promise that everyone gives. Ki first time आधे पैसे में करो, and then after that, I'll pay you. And after that, obviously never comes. We all know this. I don't know a single client who's ever said कि अच्छा अभी सस्ते में कर दो, अगली बार I'll pay you your price. So this is another thing that really bothers me, because if your rate is 100 rupees, and if I request you to do this job for 50 rupees, 50 rupees does not become your rate. That is what people don't understand, because now if that person comes to you again for the second time, in his head he automatically thinks ki acha, this guy's rate is 50 rupees now. And I just don't get that. Like, this is just being disrespectful. And that is why um, I stopped being diplomatic. I don't think I ever was diplomatic, but now I've started giving it back. Like, I'm not scared of. I remember I did an ad. I don't do a lot of ads these days, but I was doing an ad film, mixing cuts and stuff. And the director came in obviously with his posse and acting really important. And his feedback was absolutely trash. He was like the I remember the vocal dialogue that I got was the boom recording, which wasn't done well because there was a lot of wind sound, there was a lot of noise in it, and the noise correction software only could do like a certain amount, and he was expecting this like Grammy level quality, and I was trying to explain to him that it is not possible unless you re-record something in a controlled environment. And he just couldn't get it. He was like, "नहीं नहीं बेटा, हम 30 साल से कर रहे, 30 साल पहले तो ऐसे ही होता था, this that." I'm like, so then go to those people. Yeah, why are you working with me? And I'm stupid. Don't work with me. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I mean, I just feel that people talk a lot of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. And for anyone to get into what we are doing in our field, I would really urge those our clients to study and understand a little bit of what mixing entails. Or don't talk about it. Like, if I'm mixing a film, I don't go telling the director, "Ki bro, you've directed a shit film." I just do my job because I don't know much about direction. So it's not my job or duty to go and tell him, "Ki bro, direct this film better," because all I can do is tell him, "Ki I liked it or I didn't like it." That much is fine. But I can't go and tell him, "Ki direct this better," or tell an actor, "Ki act better," because I don't know acting. I don't know what to tell him or her. So it's no, who am I to tell them those things? So similarly, who are they to tell us what to do unless they know what they're talking about? So I stopped working with all these big houses unless they pay you really well or they act professional and nice and just give you respect.
So Abhishek, I don't know how many clients of yours are watching this video, but you have a lot of young students of audio music, and students of sound engineering who will be, kind of watching your journey and trying to learn. So just to wrap up this part, can you just give a few pointers to those, people who are not from Bombay, who want to build a career not in Bombay but maybe in their own city, because
Right.
there's media houses everywhere in different regions, different languages,
Mm.
etc. So for
Right.
those engineers who are watching you or wanting to know from you, can you summarize your tips or points to them?
Yeah. Okay. So what I would like to tell them, or anyone who's starting off, like be it any field in terms of sound, be it radio, be it TV, be it films, be it just music, I just feel key. I mean, and the reason why I thought of this quickly was recently I did a Instagram live with a vocal tribe, and people were talking about, like what's the cheapest way to do a basic setup, what is the cheapest way to record something, etc. And I'm like, fine, I'll give you the cheapest method, but don't try to go so cheap that your quality suffers. So, firstly, understand and train your ears into listening to all kinds of music. The most important tip I give anyone who wants to be a mix engineer or even a recording engineer is listen to all kinds of music. Just because, like, for example, if I only like funk music, I shouldn't be only listening to funk music. I listen to everything from jazz, hip hop, orchestral, classical, Bollywood, bhangra, everything, because everything has a certain sound. And tomorrow, those people can approach you for work. And are you going to say no to them? No, because even you're running your household as well. You have rent to pay. So you need to be good at whatever you're doing. So to provide the best, you need to listen to everything. You need to absorb a lot of knowledge. You need to absorb all kinds of information that is coming to you. That is number one. Number two is, I'm not saying invest a lot of money, but invest enough to buy at least the kind of equipment that is at least good enough, like can deliver some kind of quality. Like people are recording vocals on these iPhone like earphone mics and stuff. Okay, even if the mics are good, but they're probably just good enough to have a decent, clear conversation with someone on the phone. They're not they're not designed for studio recordings. Firstly, those mics are omnidirectional. Obviously, you can't like record vocals in a omnidirectional mic outside in your hall where you can hear like crows crowing and birds chirping and stuff like that, traffic noise, etc. There's so much of ambience. You need a more closed environment. You need to have a cardioid microphone to record something into, and for this you need to have just some basic knowledge about these things. So invest a little bit of money. I'm not saying don't invest. I'm not saying invest a lot of money. Invest a little bit of money. Buy a basic sound card. Buy a basic mic. Understand why you need a sound card. Understand what a sound card does. That's when you will have respect for these things. That is number one. Third thing is, I mean, I'm guilty of this. I'm not saying I've never done it, but as much as possible, please buy original software always, because, and I'll give you a reason for this is, I'm not trying to market any brand or no one's told me to say this, but the reason why I would suggest buy all the equipment that you can and buy original software is because you will value it. Like I remember I had cracked waves plugins when I started. Obviously, like who can afford like $6,000 to buy the Mercury bundle, etc. back then. So of course I got the crack version of it, and I was mixing. I did whatever I could with that. And then slowly UAD plugins came into the market, and now there are like tons of amazing plugins out there. So obviously you couldn't crack UAD plugins as far as I remember. Slate plugins, I think for Mac can't be cracked, so you had to buy them. So the moment you have to buy something, you automatically feel those plugins are better quality. It's a psychological thing. It happened to me because I opened an SSL EQ on Slate. I opened an SSL EQ on Waves, which at that point was cracked, and I compared the two. And when I did a absolute blind test, there were differences obviously between the plugins, but nothing was worse than the other, or nothing was better than the other. They both had its own characteristics. So the moment you buy a plugin, you will value it. You will know its importance. There's a reason why so much money has gone into developing those plugins. The moment it's free, you stop valuing it. You stop using it to its like full potential. Same thing with DAWs. Don't buy cracked software. Don't buy cracked Pro Tools or Logic or Cubase, etc. That is one reason. The second reason is because cracked software can always crash your session. It has happened to me so many times. I'm like in the middle of this heavy session. I've forgotten to do a save as. for the last 5 minutes, and I've done, I think, some 15 changes in that time. And that's it. My session crashed and I have to go back to it and start again. So why get into that? Just buy whatever you can at that point. Make do with the best, with what you have. And the best engineers today, like the top mix engineers in the world today, are all mixing in the box. They have invested in their own softwares. I don't think anyone's using cracked plugins or illegal software. That is one. Also, the top engineers today in the world don't use all the freaking plugins in the world. Just because something is marketed better than the other doesn't mean that is the only plugin that you can use to make your mix sound better. You can do a great mix using just the inbuilt plugins of your DAW. And I have done this myself. I challenged myself to not use any external plugins. I opened Cubase and I did an entire mix of a song just using the EQs and compression and the reverbs and everything, just what Cubase had to offer. And it turned out quite well. So these are the three most important things I would like to tell them.
Just to kind of add to this don't crack business, we've been in the business of selling originals for the last almost 20 years now.
Right.
And Sudeep Audio is selling software today at the cheapest rates in the world.
मेरे को कितना डिस्काउंट मिलेगा?
स्पेशल प्राइस सबके लिए है, हमारी नजरों में सब एक हैं. Thanks for sharing that message of buying originals and things to do. But how does one make a career, in the sense, how
Right.
does one kind of grow in this industry?
I mean, I'll just tell you how I did it. Make calls, talk to people, don't stop. I just never give up. Just keep calling people until something clicks. But don't do it up to a point where it becomes obnoxious and people just stop talking to you. Be respectful. Be professional about all the phone calls you're making. Schedule meetings with them. Talk to them. Tell them who you are. Sell yourself. Like, it's basic marketing 101. Just like make someone believe, or try and convince someone why he or she should hire you. That's it. Just think about these things before you go into meetings and stuff like that, before you contact someone. Because now because social media is rampant and everyone's connecting on social media today, I get a lot of messages on a daily basis with just stupid messages like, "Hi sir, you really think I'm somebody I don't know? I'm just going to reply back saying, 'Hi, how are you?'" No, introduce yourself in that first message. That is what it's the first impression that you cast when you're talking to someone or when you're introducing yourself to someone. Don't just like send a message, "Hi sir." You will not get any replies from anybody. Like, construct your message properly. Like, introduce yourself, tell them who you are, what your name is, where you're from, what you've done, what do you want to do, why are you reaching out to this person. Give them a reason to want to talk to you, number one. Second, give them a reason to want to hire you. So what is it that you have that you can offer, that which is why they should hire you for some kind of work? Or maybe if it's a freelance job, why should they mix with you, why should they record with you? Give them those reasons, talk to them. If anything, give them offers that they can't refuse. Like, if you really want to work with a certain client and that client isn't really keen on working with you because he or she has somebody else, do a mix for free. Show them what you have, and then maybe if they like it, fine, second mix, charge them. I'm just giving like random examples. I have also done this before, but yeah, just do whatever whatever it takes. But before you do all that, make sure you are really good. Don't sell yourself short, number one. And um, don't sell yourself in a way where you make someone believe that you are something else. You are something and your actual worth is like half that. So make yourself a really good product. Build yourself into a really good brand, number one. Then reach out to people. Because if you go and just randomly tell someone, "I'm the best mix engineer," back it up. If you tell someone, "I'm the best recording engineer," back it up. If you tell someone, "I'm the best producer," back it up with a lot of hard work. Like, there is no shortcut. There is legit no shortcut. Work your ass off. Listen to all kinds of music. Break it down. If you're a producer, listen to songs that you think are well produced. Try and replicate that. And then slowly, like, build up on your skills. Learn and just create. Just make stuff. Don't think ki only if I get a big project can I do a good job. If I get a well-produced song, can I do a good mix? No. I've got shitty production. I've received some really bad produced tracks for songs, and I have done my best to make it sound good and professional. So stop making excuses, because you can't control the outcome. Your job is to just do your best and just like put your stuff out there. So do that. Enhance your skills. Don't stop learning. In fact, I would like to plug this one book for any mix engineers out there. In school, we used to study, we used to read these books like I mentioned earlier, Bobby Owsinski and David Miles Hugo, Modern Recording Techniques, Mixing Engineers Handbook. Great books. However, the one book that really changed my approach towards mixing was this book called Mixing with Your Mind. Michael Paul Stavro. Beautiful book, because every single book on sound engineering and mixing that I have read till date has this one page of magic frequencies, which I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen or read in my life. Because every instrument has a certain frequency that it talks from on that particular day, on that particular in that particular room, depending on who is playing it and what that instrument is. Like a snare drum can be there's so many different kinds of snare drums. You have wooden snare drums, you have copper based snare drums, you have clear heads, coated heads, tama, pearl, 10 million different kind of drummers playing that with different intensities. How can you find that one magic frequency that is good on that snare drum? You can't. So this is the only book, Mixing with Your Mind, that when I read it, did not tell you anything about do this when you're mixing, or do the boost this frequency, or cut this frequency, or compress this, or do that. Nothing. It was just about the philosophy about approaching a mix. That is all it explained. And I'm not even kidding you. The next mix I did was 10 times better than my previous mix. And it just kept growing. Because mixing is, again, it's creative. It's more philosophical than it is technical, to be honest. You need to understand, because every mix engineer is going to mix the same song differently. And all the different mixes are not going to be bad. They'll all be great mixes. You give one song to the top 5 mix engineers, they'll all do a great job, but all the mixes will sound different, even though every single mix will sound good. So it's basically what you as a human are bringing to the song. That is a very important thing. So one thing I would also like to mention, because I think it's very important in terms of mixing and people who are starting up, is because we have all these plugins, we have 20 different EQs to EQ one thing. How do you decide what EQ to use? So try different EQs on different instruments. Do an experiment. I'm sure people who are starting up have a lot of free time. Use this free time to learn. Open an SSL EQ, open a Neve EQ, open a Fab Filter EQ. Do the same settings on one instrument and just bypass each thing and just listen to the difference in sound. You will notice a difference. And if you don't, train your ears to hear that difference, because you will hear it eventually. Do that. Then you'll know exactly, okay, for a snare drum, this is the EQ that I think I can work with. So get really good at a couple of plugins, learn those plugins, master them completely. And when you do that, and when you open any plugin before you start a mix, always ask yourself, is this helping the song? Is this going to make the mix better? And why is it going to make the mix better? If you have an answer to this, go ahead. If you can't answer that question, just delete the plugin. Because I remember the number of plugins I used to use 5 years back. I probably use just 1/4 of those plugins today. I use very less plugins because firstly, I know exactly what plugins to use when I'm mixing currently. Also, I know how to use them. So I don't need to put 20 different EQs or 5 different compressors into one thing. I'll use one compressor, but I'll know how to use it correctly. And that is all I need. So this is one thing I have learned, and this is one thing I would like to pass on to anyone who's starting off.